Functions in Swift are amazing pieces of code. They're so powerful. When you need to call them and use anything within the lifespan of your app, you can give it input parameters, feeding it information, and then letting it do its thing and kicking out a value that you can use or manipulate your app for whatever you may be using it for at that time. One thing that I learned recently, though, that maybe you might not have heard of just yet, is being able to put standard values when you call input parameters. So let's have a look and show you how to do it. So like I said before, functions, amazing pieces of code. But one of the things that make them so amazing is the fact that we can put input parameters when you create the function, so that when you call it, you feed it all sorts of different varying information, and it will process it, do the calculations, whatever it is that you want that function to do. But one thing that is useful is that if those parameters are not going to change very much, you can give those input parameters a standard default value that the function will just use if you feel it's not going to change that often or whatever the case may be. Now, that explanation might be more confusing than it actually is. So what we'll do is we'll jump into a playground. I'll just quickly show you how it works, play around with it a little bit with a rough example, and hopefully it will make more sense than how I'm explaining it now. So what we've got is just a plain playground. Nothing fancy going on here. We'll delete that. And what we'll do is, for our example, we're just going to try and pretend that we're doing an alarm app. And for whatever reason, you've decided you need a function to create a message. When the alarm goes off, it will give you the name of the individual to personalize it. It's a nice little feature. And then to give them the time of the day that it happens to be. So maybe like a morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it could be. Let's just forget that. So let's call our function alert message. So we want two input parameters. First of all is a name, which is going to be a string. And then the second thing will be the time of day, which again is going to be a string. Brilliant. So that is our input parameters like you would with any function, or if for whatever reason you don't include them, you don't include them. But we have with this time. So we would let our function do what it's going to do, which we're just simply, for the case of this example, it's just going to print. If I do it the right, I always do that wrong. It's just going to say, hey, name, it's demo ready. Get moving, because our alarm is sassy. And then we're going to call our function, which, if we've been doing functions, you might be new to them, but if not, you can see that we call it, and then we need to be able to put our input parameters because of what we've specified. We need to fill it out so it knows what to do. So in this case, we're just going to say that it's for Steve. Steve is getting up in the afternoon. And then when we run our code down in the console here, you're going to see our message run. When it does it, hey Steve, it's afternoon already, let's get moving. Brilliant. Now, let's have a look at our default parameters. That's how a standard function runs. It's all fair enough. But we want to look at these default functions. Now, you set a default function by simply just doing equals and then putting in a value that equates. So in this case, it's a string. It could be an int, it could be a boolean, it could be whatever else that you're putting in there. But for this example, we're going to do it, we have to match it to a string. And we're just going to say morning, because I don't know about you, but most of the time my alarm is in the morning. It's very rarely that I'm doing it at night. Now, we've set our default value, and that's all we've got to do. Looks simple enough, we can see. So morning, and now if we call this alert message again, you'll notice we now can call it without the time of day being an input. We don't have to worry about it, and if we give Steve his alarm again, notice, hey Steve, it's morning already. Let's get moving. Morning. So it's just giving us our parameter that we've put in our default value because we didn't change it. Now, this is something that is not stuck that way. We can change it if we want to. So if we do a comma and then we actually do put in time of day, we can change it. Afternoon. I don't know why I did it with camel case there. There you go. Just getting the habit of it. So, Steve, afternoon. There you go. Hey, Steve, it's afternoon already. Let's get moving. So, there we have it. We can change a default parameter that we can be able to use if we need to. And this can run for anything. We could, for example, have put both of them with default values, and that would have been fine. It would have run. So we can see the flexibility in this. It just adds an extra little aspect to functions that you might find useful if you need to use it. So that's it. That's default function, values in functions that you can put in. You might, realistically, 90% of the time, maybe 95% of the time, never going to need it. And it's not going to come up because that's the beautiful part of functions. They're so versatile and you want to make the most and use that versatility. So default values are probably not going to be of use. But like with anything, it's good to know that it's there if you ever need it. So hopefully that was useful. Maybe you learned something new, and I'll be posting other little things that I learned just as little tips and tricks that I've found as I learned through Swift myself, and a few other things that I'm thinking of as well. Probably I'll post. So yeah, thank you for watching, and maybe next time you might find something else that you find useful.